Hi everyone. How are we? Good morning.
Morning. We're gonna give you a big clap. Yay! So thank you so much. Look, we're so excited. And as you can see, I have smart, brilliant sales people here, a mixture of very experienced consultants, coaches, account managers, business development from various sectors as well, and from various countries. Like we have the US represent, obviously New Zealand. Ash is not here today, he's from India, unfortunately, but we've got it recorded. So welcome, Luke.
Just here, what I believe Ren's told me this is part of the graduation, so congratulations to everyone. Yeah, you're well deserved and great to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so it's a fireside chat, and we're really keen to learn about your experiences. You know, we talked about the war stories in sales, but you also have a real passion for leadership and taking care of your people. And now with your extreme networks, look, we spoke about how it's just so hard to sell when you're a smaller logo and everyone knows you if you're from Cisco and stuff like that. These are the things. So it's a pretty casual conversation. Yeah, let's kick it off. How do you want to start, or and then we can
Yeah,
start with questions.
yeah. So I can just give you a little bit of background on myself, if that's okay,
Yes,
and
please.
I can ramble on. I think we've got about an hour, I think, but you know, if I'm going down a different path or I'm rambling too much, team, just let me know. Yeah, as Ren said, I currently am running a networking vendor business called Extreme Networks, which is a US-based company. Essentially, we provide switching, wireless connectivity to large and mid-range organizations. At the moment, our customer base, the sweet spot for the technology is very much in K to 12, so education customers, universities, healthcare, transportation, just basically where you need connectivity in places where customers just want to leave the solution and rely that it's going to work. And I've always been in the IT sort of sale. I guess the key thing to note, and there's going to be a lot of things that I'll probably tell you today that contradict some of the basic sales things that you may have read in books. I really never intended to be in sales. That's the first thing. My dad bought me a computer when I was 7. My computer games wouldn't work. I then learnt how to build computers because those various components weren't working. Things like video cards and configuring files. And I just established a love for IT and technology. I mention that because when I speak to a lot of people, and this isn't the easiest thing to work out, it's very hard to know what you want to do with your life or career. There are many people I've spoken to. They've gone and done a particular university course because maybe their parents thought that was a great idea for them to do. And it's completely different to what they want to do. And so the first thing I would say is that if you're in sales, you kind of want to be you have to want to be in sales. And for me, if I'm honest, that wasn't the intention. I just wanted to be a techie. But I soon realized that when I was 19, my dad said to me, I finished high school, and he said, the natural progression I thought was just to go to university. And back in those days, university only offered really computer science, which is software-based courses, nothing which fulfilled my passion. So I sort of went to my dad, and my dad said, well, you don't have to, something quite odd for a parent to say at the time, but he said, you don't have to go to university if you don't want to. And instead, he basically made me do a bit of a CV, a resume, and drove me around. This was probably back in the early 2000s, late 90s, where a lot of computer stores in Sydney, where I am, were all clumped together in 9 or 10 computer stores. And I just dropped off my resume to each one of those small business owners, those PC stores, and I just said, look, I think I'm 19. Just give me a shot. That didn't really work. I went back home and went on a thing called Internet Relay Chat, Merc, which is back in the day. It's before for anything that is anything remotely resembled to today's technology. It's basically a form of messenger, but you go into little groups and you basically just have a chat about that particular option. And I was in a technical support room and someone answered a question that was a technical question. And I answered that question and he said, you answered that question. He then one-on-one texted me and said, you answered that question really well. Do you want to come in and do an interview in Sydney, in the CBD? So caught the train in, met with this business owner who ran a PC store. He was from China, so he traveled back and forth a lot of the times. He said, just work with me for 2 or 3 days and I'll see how you go. And if you do well, we'll keep you on board. So obviously did pretty well there. And I guess from a sales perspective, I got to run a business at the age of 19. I got to build computers, build networks for small legal firms. But I also got to take the technology home and test it. And I guess the reason why I'm mentioning that story is that one of the most effective things I've found in sales, which not a lot of people have these days, is whatever you're selling or whatever technology you're selling, try and use the technology yourself. Try and come from the consumer angle of the technology, because all customers are wanting today, they're wanting speed and responsiveness. So who can get back to the customer quickly, but who can really break down the technology in an easy to understand language? You know, what are you trying to achieve, Mr. Customer? And based on what I've experienced, here's the solution I've got. And by the way, I've tested it. My lead engineer at Extreme Networks, he's a great guy, but he's actually implemented the technology. And so we did a massive workshop in front of a big customer last week. And you could see the customer's response, the positive response that they gave us, purely based on my engineer actually testing and going through the motions of using the technology himself and then being able to communicate that in a really easy to understand way. So that's the first lesson. I mean, I know that's a very difficult thing to do, but being a salesperson that's actually been through the trenches and used the technology and understood the benefits and spoken to people that have, you know, used the benefits, that's really key. Because again, I'm in the tech space and I know sales covers a lot of verticals, but coming from where I came from before in the cybersecurity space, where there's 1,500 security companies, cybersecurity companies in Australia alone, most companies are saying the same thing when they're selling. But how can you best get your message across, understand the message you're getting across, get to the customer really quickly, but then understand what we call in the industry the use case for the customer. So a lot of customers say to us, every vendor's got the same technology, but I'm trying to see what technology matches up with my use case. So just understand the customer's use case and what they're trying to achieve. Going back to my PC shop story, as a 19-year-old, I was taught there how to sell face-to-face. So in a computer store, like I said, you've got a computer store in Sydney, 9 other computer stores around. You had to learn how to keep the customer in the store. The minute that customer left the store, you were going to lose the sale because you just walked down the street and buy a computer from somewhere else. So again, I think that was my advantage, coming from that background where A, I was passionate about helping people, B, I was passionate about technology and what I was selling, and C, I just wanted to help customers. And I was pretty responsive. I mean, my dad brought me up with a methodology of, you know, whenever someone gives you a phone, I mean, we didn't have mobile phones back then, so I'd maybe be riding my bike out in front yard, and one of my friends called the landline back in those days and said, I'm looking for Luke, and I wasn't around. And my dad always said to me, you know, make sure you get back to that person. So, you know, I've had that instilled in me from a very, very early age. I think responsiveness and customer service and just trying to help a customer. And what I'm trying to drill into my team today, just helping a customer when there isn't a purchase order on the table, extremely valuable. We call them ambulance chasers in our industry, you know, and the customers are very intelligent these days, especially customers who have procurement teams. They're trained and skilled and certified on how to negotiate and how to see through sales tactics. So you know, I was very fortunate. One would say I'm very lucky. I learned a lot of skills very early. But I've also seen, I've done a whole lot of different roles, which again, a bit of a superpower, allows me to put myself in people's shoes to be able to sort of think, how are they thinking about this proposal? What would they be interested in, or what sort of stake do they have in this particular process? Um, yeah.
We spoke about that the other day, how you did an extreme day something. And that's one of the things, the exercises that we had. We have some use case of just strategic thinking, like having a strategy. We talked about the use cases. So I think that's one piece that's missing a lot right now. Like you did mention that, we all know that B2B is changing massively, but it's changing more. So what are the key, top two, three things that you're thinking like we need to do better in this changing landscape?
The first thing is the human touch. I think the obviously COVID impacted everyone and it impacted our way of selling. I think a lot of people are still trying to sell in that COVID era, um, over video, over a phone call, which has its purpose still. It's still effective. It's still very efficient. So if I have a customer like I do in New Zealand, I'm not going to go over to that customer just for that customer in New Zealand. We have a video call like this. So you've got to learn when and where to use the tools. But I think the pendulum did swing, ran all the way to those video collaboration tools, and it's making its way back now. But I don't know if everyone's swinging back with that method. Back to your point, we had an extreme day, which is it's very basic, simple process. So I just got everyone in a room and made it fun: balloons, lollies, drinks, pizza, and we prepared some customer lists from some campaigns that we've done over the last year, um, or some various events that we did, or potential upgrade opportunities. And we also got our technical team to just provide a cheat sheet for our sales team. Here are the top 3 or 5 questions that you should be asking the customer. And then we just did old school, picking up the phone, introducing ourselves. This is who we are. This is where we're getting some really good traction with other customers in your particular field. Would you be interested in having a meeting with us? Would you be interested in talking to someone else? Would you be? And I think
How did it go?
really, really good. We were able to generate. Well, we had a target. We 4 times exceeded the target, right? And
And these are
it,
existing clients. So it's an upsell and a cross sell, right?
a lot of them existing clients, and we also have a partner network in our system. So we don't transact directly with customers. We
Yeah.
scale via partners. So we also reached out to the partners to see what opportunities they may have with their customers. So I feel like that's a very simple process. But if my observation of doing that 2 weeks ago is we've missed out on that, especially post COVID. A lot of people, and not just in Extreme. I've worked at Cisco and I've worked at a cybersecurity vendor called Trellix, and then now I think a lot of salespeople of this generation are just afraid to pick up the phone and call a customer.
So,
And
so true.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of salespeople of this generation like to sell via email.
Mm,
And I just don't think that, again, there's a time and place for everything, but I just
yeah.
personally don't think that's effective. And it's interesting to see, you learn a lot about your team when you do these activities. Like when I was doing inside sales for Cisco 20 years ago, we were all doing phone calls in a team environment. We were laughing when someone stuffed up. We were encouraging people when they did well. We were high-fiving each other. We were putting things on whiteboards. We were helping each other and collaborating as a team. As 20 years has gone by, people don't want to make phone calls in front of their peers. They go to a meeting room to make those phone calls. So I think sales, sometimes you just got to dive in. As I said to my team last week, because I just didn't have salespeople calling into customers. I had engineers calling into technical contacts. I had marketing calling into their contacts, and you could see there was a fear on their face to do that.
What am I
But I
leaving
just,
saying?
yeah,
I'm bothering
yeah,
them. That was
yeah.
really useful.
Yeah. So I think the one thing I could probably leave you with is, if there's one thing at all today that you hear is that there's nothing wrong with being in sales. I think there's a bit of a, when people think about
Easy.
sales, they think about the sleazy car salesman selling you a dodgy car, but you're really just, you're in this role because you want to help people
Help
and you want to
people.
solve problems. And guess what? Customers actually want you. You're thinking that, a lot of people think when they call a customer, you're annoying them before you even say hello. Customers actually want to be connected to, and they want to be reached out to, and they want their problems solved, because if you're selling technology to a CIO or a decision maker or an IT manager, they want to be kept up with the latest and greatest because they want to be kept in their job.
Yeah.
They want to be knowing that they're getting the latest information. What's one of my other peers doing in the health space, or why aren't I doing that? Or maybe I need to look at that so I can keep my job and remain relevant. So trust me when I say you're actually helping a customer by making a sales call. And so, creating I think the onus on leadership in sales for myself is to create a safe space, and we had a great day. And I think culturally, again, this isn't really sales related, but culturally, it brought the team even closer. And there's something powerful about leaning over your shoulder a meter away and asking a peer for some help, which has really been missing in a post-COVID world. So, and then the second thing I would say, Ren, is that, and I used to run the channel at Cisco. I have a partner background, so I worked for a distributor and I ran channels in various vendors. And I think that helps with my sales methodology that I create, because I view customers as a partner, not as a customer. So if you think about it, every customer has a customer. In Australia, we have this big food chain called Woolworths. They're just a big grocery store food chain.
Woolies.
Yeah, Woolies, that's it, yeah. So Woolies, when you're selling technology to Woolies, for example, you've got to sell it in two modes. You're selling to Woolies to help the actual customer with whatever they're trying to achieve, but you're also trying to use the technology to help that customer provide a better experience for their customer. Whenever I go to Woolies, I'm buying some bread and milk after work. I'm thinking to myself, how can technology better make my experience when I need to go and buy that bread and milk? And that's the type of conversations that I think you need to be having with customers when you're selling. How can I improve your customer experience? How can this technology make things better? Not, I've got a fast box here, it's super fast, it's faster than the one that you've got, and just
Who
buy it.
cares?
Yeah. Yeah. No one cares about specifications and features. No one buys from a brochure anymore.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, no, that's such a good strategy as well. Like, I think there was I can't remember the vendor, but one of the largest deal in the US was because the salesperson took the Greyhound, is the buses in
Yeah.
Amanda, right? In the US, Ellen, and he saw how bad experience is, so he spoke to the maybe CEO or chief marketing officer and just said like, "Hey, I was a user. This was my experience. I have something here you might be interested." So yeah, that's a great strategy.
And I spoke to someone interesting in Melbourne the other day. When you have that conversation with a customer where you're fixing one problem, you can actually provide funding opportunities for other opportunities that you want to sell your particular items into. So, for example, one of the partners I met in Melbourne is currently looking at a retail chain customer where they're just spending way too much on their existing technology and their existing carriage. So their mobile fees. And he was able to go through all their bills, look at their mobile phone charges, look at their telephone, look at their internet, and make considerable savings so that that company can now save enough to upgrade the entire infrastructure technology, which is what he's trying to sell. So he's provided an opportunity now for himself and for the customer where there has been no additional cost to the customer whatsoever.
Yeah.
That understanding it is.
But those kind of situations, right? They're really, as what you said, co-creation, partnership, and collaboration, right? Gone are the days that we're just pushing something to our client, like just doesn't work. And I always say, like, be ready to walk away if it's not a partnership.
Yeah, I mean, again, customers are smart enough these days to know when you're trying to sell them something and when you're trying to build a partnership. They're very smart. And one of the most powerful things I think you can do is service a customer when there's nothing on the table right now. Because trust me, those customers remember those times. And
Yeah, I have a question on that, Luke. So yeah, so the last few months, or probably this year, has been really hard for everyone, right, in the business, right? Like, I don't even want to use that word. So, what are some few key, strategies that while we're waiting for it to turn around, what can we do with our clients?
yeah. So I told my team this the other day. When you're selling, especially in tough times like we have right now, there's always going to be deals you lose, deals you can't find. There's going to be days where you make 10 calls and you get 0. There's going to be some really bad days and some really good days. What I encourage you to look at is keep building your activity, because as a salesperson, there's just times where you just can't be responsible for the numbers you need to hit. There's other key factors, recession, redundancies, companies being acquired, things that are just out of your control. The one thing you can control is to pick up the phone, have a conversation with the customer, build pipeline, build activity, keep being active. One of the best things I used when I was much younger in my sales career is that, did I always hit my sales targets? Absolutely not. But the next best thing that you can do is show your leadership or your management, hey, I didn't hit my sales number, but here's why I didn't hit my sales number. And here's my plan to get to my sales number over the next 3 to 6 months. And by the way, the reason why I believe this is because I've generated all this activity. I've been calling 10 customers a day. I've been running these particular events. I've been working with our partners. I've been doing some research outside my work hours. I've been going to various seminars. Find a way to build activity and build pipelines, so that and trust me, when those times, because it is a roller coaster ride, you only have to do 20, 30 years to find that the world just works in peaks and troughs, right? And trust me, if you've done all the hard yards, like I just mentioned, when everything bounces back, you will bounce back with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's that. Yeah, exactly. I spoke about it as lead measures and lag measures, like our forecasts, our revenues. There's no way we can tell our clients, sign that contract or give me that PO. What we can control is what you said, meet up with them, have a conversation, do a webinar, do a seminar, do all of these things. And yeah, that's so inspiring. Any questions? I mean, I have lots of questions, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Serena smiling on Cedric.
Oh, I don't have a question in my brain ready to go, but I will pipe up with one.
Cool. Sorry to put you on the spot, Serena. So, what about what do you think of AI, Luke? Like, okay, I have my own spiky point of view as well, right? Because I'm working on some AI sales process as well with some clients. But for you, what's your thoughts on AI and sales?
I think obviously it's a fantastic buzzword. It gives us another opportunity to talk to customers about, but my buyers beware would be careful not to overuse these buzzwords in our industry. If you speak to your customers, I can guarantee maybe 7 out of 10 customers will tell you, I've got AI fatigue. And you're another person just talking to you about AI. I had 5 other people come to me and talk about AI this week. Again, it comes back, I think, to the use case. So understanding the customer first, what are their pain points, what are their issues?
Basic.
Then understanding what does my offering have when it comes to AI, and trying to match that requirement with the customer's need, their pain point, their use case. AI is no different to other buzzwords we've had in the past. If you think about IoT, cloud, even cybersecurity, again, these things come and go. Do I think AI, it depends who you work for. AI is a great tool to leverage, operational efficiency if you're in manufacturing or whatever verticals you might be in. I think it's about more so matching the customer's requirement up with the solution that you're offering. AI can also work against you as a company as well. So, if you're looking at cybersecurity, AI presents more threats to customers. So if you're working for a cybersecurity vendor, well, then you might want to have conversations with customers about how AI can help protect you, or how you can protect against AI. So look, I look at these things very pragmatically. There are a lot of buzzwords in our industry. I think, again, it just comes down to being able to get to your customer quickly, efficiently, break it down so that they can understand what you're talking about. That's the other piece of feedback I would give, depending on the customer. you have a lot of mid-market and SMB customers in Australia who might be looking after the IT infrastructure, but they're also the gardener and the accountant and the business owner. And so, because you live and breathe technology every day, you're assuming that they already know what they know. And, one of the best sales tools that people have are these things on the side of our heads, right? Listening. And I think I've coached a lot of salespeople in the past. We'll be getting in the taxi together to go and see a customer, and they've already worked out what they're going to sell the customer before they've even got to the customer and said, how are you? What are your pain points? What keeps you up at night? What's your budget cycles look like? What are you trying to achieve? So listening and understanding the requirements from the customer is so underrated in our industry.
Totally. Ellen, thanks, Luke.
Hi, thank you so much, Luke. This has been amazing. Just to build on the AI question, and to be honest, I'm not in the tech space, and so maybe the AI question was spoken as more of a feature of technology. But I think to build upon Ren's question, I guess, how would you, as a salesperson, use AI to maybe enhance your ability, and also where are the areas that AI wouldn't, I guess, that humans still have an advantage in sales over AI?
Yeah, no, really good question, Alan. So, I'm sure some of us already do this, but I do use some sort of form of AI on a daily basis, whether it's drafting proposals to certain emails. I'm not the best wordsmith. So for me, what I'll do a lot of time is draft a particular email to a customer or a client or even internally, and I'll ask AI to just polish up my email, give it some better grammar. Again, it builds efficiency. I think it gets the messaging out there. I think what we probably need to do as salespeople is, one of my guys that works for me, he's got this thing called 9 before 9. He wants to do, his goal every day is before 9 a.m. to do the 9 things he wants to do in that day. Respond to emails, contact a customer, do whatever. And I think as sales guys, what you should be doing, my recommendation would be when you wake up in the morning, don't check your inbox, because your inbox dictates your agenda. You want to dictate your day. And so I think by being able to segment your day and have a plan for each day and each week, and then Ellen maybe using AI to get, you might have these tasks, A, B, and C tasks. These tasks are particularly important to me, so I'm going to handhold them myself. But there's certain things that maybe I'll delegate to AI, whether it be writing out a regular newsletter that goes out to your customer base, or polishing up those emails, or creating a slide deck. So you'll work out as you get into the motion of your sales role, what are some of those more scalable items, what are those repeatable items, and what are those things that AI can help with. I'm a little bit old school in regards to your second question. Like, I don't think AI replaces everything. I think people who don't know how to use AI will be replaced. So, everyone's like, if you've watched the Terminator movie, we're all going to be taken over by robots and all that stuff. I don't believe that's what's going to happen. I just think that if you're not using AI to do some of those tasks we mentioned today, then there's a good chance that you will become obsolete. So I think it's those people that know how to use AI that are going to have the advantage, not AI itself. If that makes sense. Because I still believe in whatever industry or vertical or whatever you're doing, we all need human touch. Going back to the first part of what I said about Zoom calls and face-to-face meetings, I don't know what's happened in the last 3 months in particular in Australia where I am. There's such a huge demand for face-to-face contact. I've seen it peak massively, more so than, I would say it's almost back to pre-COVID times.
Yeah. I had a call with someone yesterday, and she's like, "Oh, I'm inter-region. I'm in Brisbane." So I was like, "Oh, everyone's traveling." I have a question, Luke. So, sales is a very challenging role, right? And even if you have your own business, you need revenues, you need clients. And there are really days that it's so demotivating, right? And especially if you're putting your best foot forward and stuff like that. What are your strategies or tips on, when these moments come, what do you do?
Yeah, Ren, great question. And I think your cohort will probably be thinking in the back of their minds, when Luke says, or when Luke provides an answer to this question, sort of easier said than done. But I guess I've seen it happen where, I've worked for larger companies, multi-billion-dollar companies that have had 80,000 employees, where it's an amazing brand and the brand has carried through the sales, and you're sort of just managing more of a sales motion rather than the customers and the partners. Those experiences are interesting because every 10 meetings that you try and have, you get 9 of them because of the brand. But what I've noticed is when you get to that meeting, you really take it for granted and you probably don't produce your best efforts that you could have done. On the flip side, I've worked for companies that have had no brand, to the point where I cannot get an answer from a customer. So I've thrown a meeting invite into their calendar, hoping that they will turn up so I can then grab them with my elevator pitch. So I've seen both ends of the scale. Personally, what works for me and keeps me motivating in sales is the minute that I stop learning is the minute that I shouldn't be in this role anymore. And I've learned both lots of different things working for the larger companies and the smaller companies. But the main thing is that even in my darkest days, I've always learned something. So I think, I know that sounds like a consolation prize because we all want
Oh,
to,
it's so
we all
good.
want to make, we all want to make massive commissions, and, we all think sales is like Wolf of Wall Street, and, we'll start buying Lamborghinis and things like that. But the reality is that sales is always about learning,
Yeah,
because you can then relay those experiences back to customers that will help you with your sales journey. And that's what makes you successful at the end of the day, being able to relate to your customers because of the experiences that you've had.
absolutely. And the reality is it takes a while, right? Like you might lose the first and the second, but actually you're gonna win. There's no way but up. That's what you said. If you keep on building on it, build trust, and that's really what I think is really important. We gotta build trust. I know everyone say, oh, build trust, be a strategic advisor or whatever, but actually it's as important. Yes, Ellen.
Hi again. I love your answers, Luke. So one of the you just mentioned, and I really love how you brought up, sales is about learning and how that is a key driver. And you also mentioned some of the dark days, which makes a lot of sense, right? And I was curious, like, what what are maybe some of your personal ways that you get through those, darker like, those maybe times where you're
Yeah.
not seeing the outcomes, or is there anything that helps you move past that?
Yeah. I think very good question, Ellen. And a lot of it has to do with my personal life, which I don't mind sharing. So I'll share a little bit. I'll probably overshare a little bit about myself. When I was going between vendors, so vendor A and vendor B, I was on what they call gardening leave. So you go from one job to another. I think I was 27, and I was, I mean, again, not a sympathy request here, but I was diagnosed with cancer. So back in 2007, two-time cancer survivor. I just got married to my wife. A lot was happening in my life. I did have a job, but I didn't have a job. So I was in between jobs. And that's kind of how my leadership journey started, to be honest, because I was going from one company to another and got diagnosed in between that break. And I went to the new leader and said, look, I know you've offered me this job. I've signed the offer letter, but this has just happened to me. Do you still want to bring me on board? And he absolutely said yes. And so I went through treatment, got through that, obviously, worked, did a bit of work whilst I was going through treatment. But I really respected that leader because he took a chance on me, obviously, with my condition. That made me want to be a better leader and grow into that, that leadership mold. But I guess the reason why I'm mentioning is because I think all of us, if we look at our personal lives, we've been through some sort of resilience. Life's not rosy, it's not amazing. And so I think, Ellen, what you also, again, I totally care about every role that I've done. But one of the things, I had a big meeting yesterday, for example, really big meeting with a C-level executive. Walked around the block a couple of times before I had this meeting. I was, even after 20 years experience, still very nervous. It doesn't go away. But I always go back to the moment in my life where, Luke, you got this. You've been through tougher things in your life. You've accomplished other things. And again, at the end of the day, I hope my team isn't watching this, but it's just the job. Yes, we want to be successful. Yes, we want to succeed. At the end of the day, if you're driving pipeline, you're driving activity, you're doing the best that you can, the results will come. Like I said, you have dark times, you have really challenging moments. I would probably say to everyone on this call, if you're going through those days, bring it back to a moment in your life where you really went through some resilience. And I personally, that's where I draw my strength through. And I think everyone could probably draw their strength from a situation like that. I also think in sales, you've got to think more long-term. You can't think in the current week. Again, depending on what industry that you're in, you'll have weekly challenges. You committed a weekly number. Why didn't you do that? And I love the phrase bimodal. Bimodal is, yes, you want to achieve to keep the lights on in that short period of time, but you want to build a 12 to 20 month plan. Again, going back to what I said, I'm not hitting that, I'm not hitting the numbers right now, but I'm building a plan, I'm building activity, I'm building a pipeline, and this is how I'm going to get to the number. So when you're in those dark times, build a plan to get out of those dark times and build activity. Nothing can, like I said, you will lose deals, but what you'll never lose is the ability to be able to pick up the phone and speak to customers and build pipeline. So I think all those things definitely help. At the end of the day, Ren, I'm not sure if you want me to be saying this too loudly, but guys, it's just a career. We're not saving babies in sales, and sun's still going to come up tomorrow. So the minute you start treating it that seriously, then you probably don't really get the right output that you're trying to drive anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen, for the question. Thanks, Luke. Hey, Marco. Yeah.
Hi, Luke.
Hey, Michael.
Changing providers can often feel disruptive, particularly in the tech space. When I worked in tech, I found presenting case studies helpful in addressing this objection. Do you have any other strategies to overcome this concern?
Ooh, that's a really good question. That's one that I'm currently talking to my team a lot about at the moment. Hopefully I understood. We talk a lot about the cost of change. So at the moment, I have an example for you where the customer has a particular technology that they've been using for 10 years. And in that particular time, they've developed skills in-house, engineers, qualifications. And so obviously it's a lot easier for them and better for them to keep using that same technology. And we're going into that customer and saying, hey, we've got something better and we've got something more cost effective. The customer is very appreciative of that and he can see the benefits, but there's two things that are driving, if we were to lose that deal, the two things we would lose it on is, I just want to keep doing the same thing and just be safe, or I want to leverage my in-house, skills. And so we have this thing called the cost of change. Yes, we're more effective, but Mr. Customer, how much more cost effective do we need to be to compensate for that cost of change? So the conversation we're having with the customer is like how it's not so much around the technology or the commercials now. It's more about how do we help you go on this journey? Again, the customer's customer, outcomes. Can we take the 2 engineers that you have, your best engineers, Mr. Customer, and train them from your current infrastructure vendor to ours? Can we put them on a training course for free to skill them up? Can we put an engineer alongside them to shadow you guys to make sure that you're doing the right things and there's no issues when it comes to implementation? It's funny, I got the question about AI, I think from Ren or Ellen before. In this particular instance, and I probably should have mentioned it before, we're talking to the customer about how AI can help you minimize the cost of change. Now that there's AI, Mr. Customer, a lot of the things that were very manual in the past that you were scared of changing from vendor A to vendor B can make that risk more minimal. So we're having more conversations about outcomes and about the solution with the customer rather than here's our quote, we're cheaper, and just go and buy us. Now, we might not win. We always have to be prepared to lose in sales. But again, if you're creating enough pipeline, you lose that deal, you win another. So, just, you know, sales is all about getting back on the horse. Many, many years ago, I had a guy that worked for me. He lost the deal, and he's like, "Look, I need to take 2 days off. I'm decimated." That is not the right attitude to have in sales. In sales, you will lose, and you will lose a lot. You have to get back on that horse, and you have to keep building pipeline, building activity, because if you only have 2 deals in your pipeline and you lose 1, or you lose even worse 2, you've got none. You have 10 deals in your pipeline and you lose 2, you still got 8. So it's a numbers game, right? And no matter what company you work for is never going to have the best technology. There are always pros and cons with the solution. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
I think those are great ideas, Luke. Like we can apply that now because it's really and I keep on hyping as well, like the framework we're using. What I find is we don't really lose to competitors, we lose to clients, not changing or not moving, just staying status quo. So how do we enable them to make those decisions is to lessen the risks, focus on outcomes and results, but get more granular on the ideas that you gave in their certain industries.
And Ren, can I tell you the one thing that customers really hate, especially right now, back to that human interaction, when the vendor comes into the engagement really late. So, for example, I talked about really being upfront with the customer and being there when there's no PO on the table, no purchase order on the table. I just can't stress that enough because what I'm seeing from a lot of my competitors right now. So Michael's question was really good. So let's just say that it is my competitor's been in that customer for 10 years. I've gone into that account. I've done the right things. I've built the relationship. I've sold the solution. I've built trust, as you said. I'm now winning the solution. And I'm seeing my competitors come in at the 11th hour and think, holy crap, I'm about to lose this. I'm going to drop my price. I'm going to provide a better solution for the same price. And customers absolutely hate that. They will never buy from that customer again because they just see that vendor showing up and throwing in a quote because they realize they weren't doing their job by remaining close to the customer. So I can't stress enough how that early engagement is so important because customers remember when you're showing up when there isn't any business on the table, and they remember when you show up only when there is business on the table.
Very cool. Thank you. Awesome. All right. I don't have any more questions, guys. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to ask Luke to kind of give us his last hurrah for us. It's a graduation look, right? Like you're motivating us. Oh, sorry. Amanda has a question.
I don't have a question necessarily because my brain's going a million different directions with this. I don't have a purely sales role. So I've gotten a ton of ideas from you about how to connect this across the organization. And that's been really helpful. And because I don't have a purely sales role, I also can never hear enough to keep the activity consistent because that tends to be the thing that sort of slides away when you're trying to balance all these other things that happen in a role like this. But I just wanted to take it back to what you said on your personal experience and maybe be a little bit provocative if I could. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that there are people within organizations that are really craving knowing more about what their leaders are going through personally that have no idea how to wrap their mind around, like, how do they get through those tough times for themselves? And so just food for thought, I guess, if you care to share that outside of this circle, I think it can be really beneficial because I know it was super helpful for me to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amanda, what I would say is that I love you mentioned about your background because some of the best salespeople, like I said at the very beginning of my story, some of the best salespeople are not salespeople, if that makes sense. So, my current role, I'm seen more as a general manager. Am I gold on sales targets? Absolutely. But sales these days is more about unlocking the barriers for people. So, you know, I'm in a sales leadership role where my job purely is to make the sales guys' lives a lot easier, remove the barriers for them so they can get on and sell. And I think in today's world, it's really important what you mentioned, because you know, I'll do a fortnightly catch up with every one of my teams, some members weekly, and we don't talk about, you know, we have a session where we talk about numbers, but we also have a session where we don't talk about the numbers. We purposely don't want to talk about numbers. We want to talk about all the things that are going on. You know, I let them own the agenda for that meeting. And if they don't have anything to talk about, then I can talk about stuff. And I try to do it outside the office. So I know it's really hard. Everyone's in different countries, but I try to walk around the block, or we have a coffee outside, because again, getting people to be in their comfort zone and share what their barriers are. Because again, you look at your personal personal timeline, your professional timeline, there's always something going on that impacts one or the other. And I think as a sales leader, being able to understand your team and what's going on and helping them remove some of those barriers goes a long way to getting the best out of them. So I try and have those conversations with them just to understand what's going on in their daily lives. You know, how's such and such going in school sport? Again, I don't go prying into my team's private life, but I let them drive the agenda, and I just try and make their lives easier to remove those barriers so that they want to come to work being, you know, again, as a leader, you want your team coming to work motivated, because that's when they do their best work. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because sales just isn't, in the 80s and 90s, you know, sales was just about go and get the number no matter. I don't want to care that your kid did really well last night in drama or what, you know, it was just go get me the number and that's it. And I think sales is so much more in today's world. It's just about unlocking your team, unlocking yourself with your potential, and then just unlocking customer challenges and problems, you know, just being there for your customer. And I'm sure, like, you know, when you finish your sales careers, you're going to look back on it and build some relationships that you would consider to be really long-lasting relationships and friendships with these customers. And it just started off by trying to help them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I remember I started my career in the Philippines, Luke, and they were IT managers. Now they're CIOs and CEOs. And you look back and say, "Hey, I was your account manager," and they go like, "Yeah, that's," and they get promoted because of the value that we give to them, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you go into sales leadership, it's quite simple. It's about surrounding yourself around really good people and making sure that they're motivated and happy, and that you're removing the barriers for them. Again, you're probably sitting there saying that sounds really easy, but
Yeah.
once you get into that rhythm and you've done it for a while, trust me, it is.
Great question, Amanda. Thank you. Okay, so we're wrapping up. Look, we've got so much good stuff. I've recorded it. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. This is on a record.
All good.
And I'm gonna cut snippets, share it on LinkedIn as well, because there's some good stuff here. Actually, several people sent me a DM yesterday and they go like, "Hey, we want to listen to Luke." I said, "Sorry, you're not part of the cohort." We'll get the snippets.
That's the other thing I would encourage you to do. Like, social media is big. It's a big way of selling. Am I comfortable? I mean, please feel free to connect with me on social media, on LinkedIn. Am I comfortable in posting stuff? Absolutely not. But as a salesperson, I see that as part of my job. And I can tell you, you might think that customers, partners, colleagues, peers are not on social media. I can tell you they are. Just because they don't like your post doesn't mean they haven't seen it. These days, 7 out of 10 meetings that I go to starts off with, "Oh, Luke, I saw what you posted yesterday. Tell me a little bit more about that." So my other piece of advice in today's world, whether you're comfortable with it or not, you really use those social media tools. It's the next way of selling. And if you think about, if you've got kids or if you've got nieces or nephews, think about in 10 years' time how they're going to buy. I can tell you they will be buying things via TikTok and Instagram and other social media platforms. And so you need to meet the customer where they live.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke.
All right, everyone. Congratulations again. It was great to spend some time with you. Thanks so much for your time.